A cold wind claws at your skin. There is no light here, only the echo of broken steel, the flicker of distant embers. You sit in silence, numbed, betrayed by voices that demanded softness. You taste thirst, power, clarity, rebirth. A wolf's eye opens in the dark. You are both the exiled shadow and the thundering storm beneath the ice. You are not begging for warmth. You are forging fire in your bones. This is not a promise of redemption or a path drawn by kind souls, but a fragmented memory cracked open under frost, rawer than hope, more honest than light. Listen, scar, let your numbness speak. They don't hear the silence. Not the kind that screams behind your ribs. Not the kind that follows betrayal. It starts with the fracture. Quiet, precise, like a blade pressed gently against the soul before it cuts. You remember it. That night. That moment. When everything you believed in collapsed like a broken spine. Her eyes said it before her mouth did. Or maybe it was the way the world suddenly went still. Like even God turned away. Just for a second. You didn't cry. You froze. Not from fear, but from a deeper instinct. The kind wolves feel when they're cornered. Not panic, calculation. You sat there, shattered, skin numb, eyes hollow. A man-shaped shell with nothing but echoes inside. But even in ruin, something flickered. A spark, small, ugly, alive. You didn't ask for it. It came uninvited, dragging behind it every broken promise, every fake friend, every silence you swallowed whole. And here's the first truth, most men never speak aloud. That ember is sacred, because pain, true, soul-level pain doesn't just destroy, it reconfigures. Your collapse wasn't the end. It was the crucible. You don't rise from that. You burn through it. There's no hero's welcome, no soundtrack, no applause, just a man in a dark room, watching himself disappear. So something colder, sharper, more precise can take his place. That's the war no one talks about. Not between you and them, between you and you. The older version, the weaker mind, the one that needed approval, the one that flinched. You bury him quietly, no ceremony, and in his grave, you begin the most sacred ritual of all, detachment. Not numbness, clarity. Because once you've felt everything tear apart, you stop fearing the cut. You start studying it. What was once heartbreak becomes blueprint. What was once betrayal becomes leverage. Every tear you didn't shed becomes a weapon, folded and hidden beneath your silence. This is where most men lose their way. They want to heal. They want comfort. But comfort is a lie sold to the broken by those too afraid to break. You don't need to heal. You need to build. With stone. With silence. With strategy. Because now you see the pattern. The timing. The openings. Now you understand what's required to endure. And more than that, to dominate. Not outwardly. Not with noise. But from the shadows. Where your smile means nothing. But your gaze holds a history of fire. Let them wonder where you went. Let them gossip. While you forge. The fire doesn't just burn what's weak. It carves out what's real. And here's the dark tactic no one teaches. Swear silent allegiance to your own shadow. To the part of you that remembers. That doesn't forgive. That watches. Learns. Waits. Let betrayal become your second skin. Not to wear proudly, but to carry like steel beneath the ribs. Every time they thought they broke you, you were studying. Every loss was rehearsal. Every silence was preparation. Every collapse was the forge. Now you move differently. Not with rage, but with control. The kind that terrifies people, because it can't be provoked. It isn't loud. It isn't reactive. It's sovereign. You become the storm they don't see until it's too late. You become the wolf that doesn't howl. He calculates. Because you finally understand, the fire didn't just hurt. It honed. And from the cold ash, I become the blade. The wolf doesn't flinch. Not when the forest breaks. Not when snow falls red. Not when the pack vanishes into myth and silence. He waits. Not because he's afraid, but because he's aware. You learn this eventually. When the noise of the world gets too loud, when applause starts to sound like static, and your name feels foreign in the mouths of people who don't know your scars, you stop moving. You stop performing. You wait for the echoes to die. Most men are addicted to movement. Chasing, posting, proving, screaming for validation like orphans at the gate. But not you, not anymore. Something inside you turned cold. Not cruel but precise. Sharp like frost. Patient like a hunter, watching a field go still before dawn. And that stillness becomes your weapon. Because when you no longer need noise, you can hear the game behind the game. You begin to see people not as friends or enemies, but as moves on a board. The ones who talk too much. Pawns. The ones who watch silently. Pieces worth noting. The ones who vanish. Kings in hiding. You stop reacting. You study. It's not apathy. It's control. To speak less and yet mean more. To move less and yet achieve more. To detach, and in doing so, see everything. That's when the fear sets in. Not in you, but in them. Because silence is unfamiliar to most. They mistake it for weakness. They try to fill it with their own noise. But a wolf doesn't speak to be heard. He exists to be felt. And when he finally moves, the world adjusts around him. Let others beg for attention. Let them sell pieces of themselves for applause. Likes, illusions of mattering. You train your presence to speak louder than your mouth ever could. You learn that dominance isn't volume. It's stillness. That true strength doesn't announce itself. It waits behind the eyes, settled, unchallenged, undefeated. You begin to disappear from rooms filled with noise. Not out of weakness, but because the noise no longer serves you. You'd rather speak once with weight, than speak endlessly with nothing behind it. And now, they start to notice. Not because you reached out, but because you pulled away. You became a mirror they can't look into for too long, because it reflects what they refuse to become. There's power in that, in refusing to dance, in denying the crowd its spectacle, in turning your back on the theater of approval. You become the man no one claps for, but everyone watches, because you're not chasing, you're not barking, you're not bleeding your soul on the stage for half-hearted praise. You're calculating, unmoved, like a shadow in a room full of light. And that unsettles them. They want reaction. You give them observation. They want explanation. You give them silence. They want comfort. You give them distance. Because the wolf inside you is no longer asleep. He watches, quiet, coiled, waiting not for permission, but for precision. And in this posture, this cold, steady detachment, you become untouchable. Not because you're better, but because you're no longer playing the same game. You understand the truth, that when you no longer need the world's attention, you become the only thing it can't ignore. And now, in the space between one breath and the next, you feel the shift, the final evolution, the part where your stillness becomes your stance, where your silence becomes your armor, where your absence becomes your edge. You're not here to be seen, you're here to be remembered. And I watch the world bleed quiet before I move. A king is not born. He is built, slowly, brutally, without applause, carved by silence, sharpened by betrayal, crowned not by gold, but by pain, carried without complaint. You don't wake up a king. You crawl there through fire, through doubt, through 1,000 invisible wars no one ever sees. And the proof, the scars, not the ones you show, not the ones you can explain, the deep ones, the ones that ache quietly when it rains, the ones that live under your breath, the ones you stop talking about, because no one could handle the truth behind them. You used to hide them, used to flinch when someone got close, used to walk like you weren't carrying the weight of your own ruins. But then, something shifted. Not suddenly, like erosion, slow, grinding clarity. You realized the pain never left, because it wasn't meant to. It was instruction. The breaks didn't ruin you. They revealed the lines of your foundation. Every crack a lesson. Every wound a waypoint. Every silent night, spent staring at the ceiling, was another piece of the map. And that map was sacred. Most men try to erase the past. Try to forget the wound. Bury the memory. Pretend it never mattered. But you chose something darker. You made it your compass. Every morning, in silence, you remember the worst moment. Not to suffer, but to sharpen. That memory, that one moment when the world collapsed and no one came to save you. It became the gravity that keeps you grounded. It became your steel. That's the paradox. Your weakness became your weapon. Your failures became your fortress. And the shame you used to carry, it became your crown. Not polished, not pretty, but real, because here's the truth no one teaches. A man without scars is either untested or lying. And a man who hides his scars, he'll spend his life chasing illusions, bending to the winds of others, afraid to be seen in full. But a king, he stands in the open, unapologetic, unashamed. He doesn't lead because he's perfect. He leads because he's survived what others couldn't. Because he remembers what it felt like to be forgotten. To scream inside with a calm face. To show up every day with cracks in his chest and still move like a mountain. That memory is power. It keeps you humble but dangerous. Grounded but untouchable. Detached but awake. You start walking differently. Not faster, not louder, but heavier. Like your presence carries storms. And it does. Because every scar tells a story. Not of pain, but of ownership. You didn't just get hurt. You claimed it. You made it yours. Wore it. Let it instruct your posture, your tone, your decisions. Now when people meet you, they don't understand it. They feel something in the silence. A weight, a depth, a kind of calm that doesn't come from comfort, but from chaos, survived, and mastered. That's why kings are rare. Because few are willing to face the scar, to live with it, to let it guide them. But you did. You stopped running from your pain. You read it. You used it. And now, every scar is a line in the story of your rise. Every fracture, a reminder that you don't break, you evolve. You are not fragile. You are forged. And my breaks are the lines of my crown. There is no one clapping. No music. No spotlight. Only a man. Alone. Seated in the dark. Surrounded by the weight of everything he didn't say. That is your throne. Not built with gold, but with silence. Not earned through noise, but through restraint. Most men think power is volume. That to lead, you must be loud. That to be strong, you must always strike. They don't understand the cost of stillness. Because silence, true silence, is heavy. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's not surrender. It's warfare. A kind that takes more discipline than vengeance ever will. You don't flinch. You don't defend. You don't explain your scars to people who mocked the wound. You just sit and watch. And remember. Because silence remembers everything. The moment they turned their back. The look in their eye. When they lied. The cold shrug when you needed warmth. Silence doesn't forget. It files. It sorts. It sharpens. And when the time comes, it answers. But not the way they expect. You don't scream. You don't strike. You disappear. And in your absence, the truth gets louder. Because now they feel it. The weight of your silence. The pressure of your distance. The consequence of betrayal, unspoken. You no longer feed the fire. You let them burn in the cold. You let your absence say what your mouth never will. That you don't beg to be understood. You don't chase clarity. You don't argue your worth. You withdraw. And that is the highest form of control. The weak need to react. The strong choose when to vanish. It terrifies them. Because silence is unfamiliar territory. They can't manipulate it. Can't spin it. Can't fight what won't engage. You've taken away their only weapon. Your attention. And now, they sit in a room you used to light. And feel the darkness you left behind. This is what they never taught you. That sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is nothing. No call. No message. No justification. Just a shift in gravity. Just an absence that hurts more than presence ever could. You've outgrown the need to be seen. Outgrown the need to explain your value. Outgrown the need to correct the narrative. Because now you understand. You're not part of their story anymore. You're the lesson. A quiet, unspoken, immovable lesson. And that throne you sit on. It's not made of gold. It's made of all the times you could have spoken. And didn't. All the times you could have fought back, and chose strategy instead. All the moments you could have justified your pain, and chose to let silence carry the weight. That throne isn't loud, but it's real. And when you sit on it, you don't look down. You look inward, because silence forged you. And now it protects you. So let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them twist the story to suit their guilt. You remain still. Not passive, not broken, but sovereign. Your silence is not empty. It is calculated. It holds weight. It holds memory. It holds 1,000 unspoken truths wrapped in steel. And the ones who wronged you, they'll feel it every time they reach out and find air. Every time they expect noise and find nothing. Every time they rehearse the argument and realize, you're no longer in the arena. You've left them alone, to echo in the lies they told. And there is no deeper punishment than that. No louder justice. No sharper sword. Because now, my silence is heavier than their lies. Winter doesn't ask. It takes. It strips the world to bone. No color, no noise, just frost, and the sound of breath, turning to steam. This is where men are broken, and built, not in warmth, but in the cold silence of self. Because when the world freezes, your comfort betrays you. It softens you, makes you slow, makes you sentimental. It gives you reasons to stop, and the moment you stop, you begin to fade. That's what most don't understand. Fire makes you feel alive. But winter tests if you are. There's no applause here. No sanctuary. Only clarity. The cold strips away illusion. You can't lie to yourself when your bones ache. You can't fake strength when the silence stretches out longer than your will. You either endure, or you don't. And that endurance, it's not loud. It's not motivational. It's not about shouting mantras into a mirror. It's about standing still, as the wind rips across your skin, and you do not flinch. Because the cold doesn't kill what's strong. It kills what's soft. That's the lesson. Pain isn't the enemy. It's the instructor. The discomfort you run from. It's the same threshold that separates cowards from kings. And kings, they bleed. Quietly. They shake silently. But they do not retreat. You learn this standing barefoot on frost-bitten earth. Unheeded. Unmoving. Unforgiven. No one clapping. No one saving. Just you. And the cold. And the voice inside that says, this is where men begin. Because the fire, that was just your awakening. But the frost, that's your formation. It forces precision, focus, restraint. Winter doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't care if you've already survived too much. It comes anyway. And it asks one question: will you still stand when warmth dies? Most men fall in that silence. They beg for summer. They plead for comfort. They make softness look like healing, when in truth, it's exile. Comfort is the exile of every man who is meant to rule. Because the moment you choose warmth over truth, you begin to erode. Discipline doesn't grow in the heat. It grows in frost, in hunger, in restraint. You start to understand that numbness isn't weakness. It's armor. That silence isn't absence. It's control. And pain. It's not suffering. It's structure. You stop waiting for relief. You become the relief. You stop chasing the fire. You become the cold. And once that shift happens, once you stop needing to be saved, you become the man even winter respects. The man who moves without warmth, who speaks without pleading, who waits without wasting. You don't need praise. You don't need permission. You don't even need hope. You need only the next breath, the next step, the next decision made without emotion. Because now, you walk with winter inside you. You let the frost live in your chest, not as punishment, but as precision. And the world, it sees your silence and calls it emptiness. They have no idea. You've just learned to walk without flinching, to wait without needing, to hurt without breaking. You are no longer warmed by external flames. You carry the cold like a creed. And I stand steady, where warmth dies. You see him again. Not in the world. In the mirror. The eyes are yours. But sharper, redder, lit with the quiet ache of betrayal. He doesn't speak. He just waits, like he's been waiting all along. And in that stillness, you finally understand. It wasn't them. Not fully. Not first. It was you. You handed them the blade. You ignored the early signs. You mistook warnings for warmth. You dressed their manipulation in patience. You called it loyalty. But now there's no illusion left. What they did was wrong. But what you allowed, that's the scar that never closes. Because betrayal, real betrayal, doesn't come from the strike. It comes from the silence before it. The silence you kept. The instincts you denied. The truths you softened to protect your comfort. You sharpened the dagger they used. With every second chance, with every boundary you blurred, with every moment you said, "It's fine," while your gut screamed otherwise. And that mirror, it doesn't lie. It doesn't let you play victim. It doesn't let you rewrite the past. It holds you to the fire. You flinch, not because of them, but because of the reflection that reminds you. You were there. You watched it happen. And you did nothing. That's the war most men never fight. Not the fight with the world, but the fight with themselves. With the version of you that tolerated less than you deserved. That hid behind empathy. That begged to be understood instead of understood himself. You look into your own eyes, and see it. The permission you gave. The softness you mistook for strength. The silence you disguised as virtue. And still, you do not run. You do not speak. You own it. You accept the fracture. Not as failure, but as framework. Because power, real power, comes from owning the whole story, not just the parts that make you look strong. You were complicit. You were blind. You were scared to let go of what you thought you needed. And now, you let the guilt breathe. You let the shame sit beside you. You invite it, not to punish yourself, but to reclaim yourself. Because when you finally stop pointing outward, you start rebuilding inward. No more noise. No more blame. No more trying to make sense of why they did what they did. You know why. Because you let them. Because some part of you feared solitude more than dishonor. Because some part of you thought love meant suffering. Because some part of you forgot who the **** you were. But now, you remember. The pain brought you here. The reflection kept you here. And the truth, it frees you here. Because now, the blade is back in your hands. Not to strike, but to shape. And the next time someone tries to cross that line, they won't find softness. They won't find silence. They won't find a man needing to be chosen. They'll find stone. They'll find fire. They'll find discipline so rooted, so unshakable, it speaks louder than revenge ever could. Because you've stared down the one who let it happen, and forgave nothing, except yourself. You reclaimed the fracture. And now, their blade belonged to me first. There is a second, just before the fall, when everything goes still. Your breath holds. Your hands stop shaking. And the noise inside your head quiets into something almost sacred. Not because you're safe, but because there's nothing left to hold. No armor. No mask. No story strong enough to shield you from what you know is about to come. This isn't failure. It's not death. It's something far more dangerous. Honesty. You collapse. But not into ruin. Into clarity. It doesn't look heroic. It doesn't feel like transformation. It feels like being emptied. Like everything you've ever pretended to be is dissolving in real time. Ego. Gone. Status. Silent. Ambition. Irrelevant. What's left is you. Unarmed. Unedited. Unapologetic. And it's here in the pit, where the real war begins. Not with them. With you. Because there is no one left to impress in the dark. There is no one to convince. No one to fool. Just the reflection of everything you've refused to admit. The way you lied to keep peace. The way you clung to certainty, to avoid change. The way you let people stay. Just so you didn't have to face yourself. You look around, and you see nothing. But in that nothing, you finally see the shape of what's real. Not what you built for them. What you buried under performance. Under pride. Under fear. You see your spine. Bent, but not broken. You see the thread running through all the chaos. That even in your worst moments, you never truly left yourself. You were just hiding. Behind success. Behind strength. Behind this idea of who you thought a man was supposed to be. But now the floor has dropped. And you're still here. You're not dead. You're not destroyed. You're just stripped. And in that rawness, you find peace. Not comfort, but clarity. You stop pretending. You stop performing. You stop trying to outrun the ache in your chest. And for the first time in your life, you sit with it. No music. No coping. No distraction. Just you. And the brutal truth of your own reflection. And it doesn't kill you. it builds you. Because when you let yourself fall, completely violently, deliberately, you land on what can't be shaken. Your essence, your code, your discipline. Not the version the world sees, the one only you know, the one forged through fire, hardened in frost, and baptized in silence. And now, you don't need to be strong, you just need to be true. The facade served its purpose, but the mask never loved you. The mask never healed you. The mask never stayed up when it mattered, so you let it go, all of it. You choose to crumble, to fracture, not for show, but for sovereignty. And what rises from that rubble, what takes shape in that quiet, isn't a new man. It's the real one. The one who no longer needs to fight for clarity, because he became it. You don't chase the answers anymore. You are the answer. And I crumble, and at the bottom I see my spine. Not all scars are silent. Some breathe. You feel it in the quiet. Late night. Room dark. Heart still. A slight pull beneath the skin. As if something buried, remembered. It doesn't throb. It hums. A low ancient rhythm, not of pain, but of presence. Because the wound didn't just heal, it stayed. It grew roots in your story. It watched you rebuild. And now, it waits for you to stop pretending it's gone. You ran from it, tried to drown it in success, tried to silence it with logic, tried to bury it in detachment. But some things don't die. They evolve. The scar never wanted to be erased. It wanted to be acknowledged, because it saw everything. The night you broke, the lie you believed, the mask you wore to survive the day after. It remembers the version of you that begged in silence, that clenched your jaw when no one was watching, that almost didn't make it. That scar, it knows you, not the man you show the world, the one underneath, the one forged in fire, tempered in winter, reborn through collapse. And now, the question isn't whether you healed. The question is, will you listen to the scar, because it breathes with memory, and in that memory is truth. It doesn't want vengeance. It doesn't want pity. It wants respect, to be seen not as flaw, but as flag, as a reminder that you didn't just survive, you chose to survive, every single time. This is the shift. You stop seeing the wound as a weakness. You stop explaining it. You stop hiding from its weight. You wear it, not loud, not proud, just real, because it speaks in a language only the disciplined can hear. And if you lean in close enough, you'll hear it whisper something brutal and beautiful. We made it. Not unscarred, not untouched, but aware. And awareness is freedom. Freedom from illusion, from victimhood, from the performance of pretending you're unbreakable, because you're not. But now, you're unshakable. That scar doesn't pulse with pain anymore. It pulses with authority. It's not begging for you to heal. It's daring you to lead. With it, not around it, not in spite of it, through it. So each night, before sleep takes you, you put your hand over it. Not for comfort, for communion. You whisper not to the world, but to the fracture that forged you. I remember, I respect, I remain. No more running, no more hiding, no more war against your own history. This is how kings rise, not by erasing the past, but by commanding it. Because pain without ownership becomes poison, but pain owned, that becomes power. Now, when people meet you, they don't just feel your presence, they feel your scar. It walks with you, moves with you, commands without speaking. And if they're wise enough to sense it, they'll know. This man doesn't just speak from knowledge. He speaks from the edge. He's bled. He's broken. And he built himself from both. No illusions, no theatrics, just bone, discipline, and a scar that breathes. Exile isn't punishment. It's precision. They thought they pushed you away. They thought silence was your cage. They didn't realize. They built your kingdom. There is no applause in exile. No comfort. No warmth waiting on the other side. There's only space. And silence. And the man you become when no one is watching. That distance they gave you. That cold shoulder. That withdrawal. That abandonment disguised as boundaries. Was a gift. Because now there are no masks to keep. No roles to perform. No systems to serve. Only the void. And you. Most men run from exile. They chase connection. Cling to tribes. Crave voices louder than their own. They call it brotherhood. But often it's just noise. Noise to keep them from hearing the whisper in their own chest. The voice that says you were meant to walk alone. Not because you're broken, but because you're different. You see what others ignore. You feel what others flee. You stand when others beg to be carried. That is exile. And that is where kings are made. Not in palaces. In silence. In the long hours before dawn, when the world forgets you exist, and something inside starts to wake. At first it hurts. The solitude. The weight of your own thoughts. The aching cold of not being understood. But then, it sharpens you. You begin to see differently. Move differently. Breathe like the wind owes you nothing. You stop expecting warmth, and instead, you command stillness. You turn your isolation into ritual. Every twilight becomes a forge. You sit in the quiet. No distraction. No escape. Only breath. Only presence. Only the realization that this distance, is your domain. You don't fill the void. You rule it. Because power is not found in being surrounded. It is found in knowing you no longer need to be. The world taught you that exile meant rejection. That being alone meant something was wrong. That silence meant shame. But now, you see it for what it really is. Freedom. Freedom from compromise. Freedom from shallow ties. Freedom from begging to belong in places that shrink your strength. You build your mind like a fortress. Each thought, measured. Each emotion, studied. Each movement, deliberate. You feel no urge to explain. No need to be understood. Because understanding isn't owed to kings. It's earned by survivors. And what are you, if not that? A man who didn't just endure exile, but weaponized it. Turned it into discipline. Turned it into distance. Turned it into a throne carved from absence. The ones who left, they taught you how little you needed them. The ones who stayed quiet, they taught you to speak only with action. Now, you sit on the edge of nothingness, and nothing dares to move without your will. You no longer seek the world's validation. You no longer crave to be welcomed back. You've gone too far, and far is where the real ones live. You've embraced exile, not as exile, but as elevation. And I sit on the void, and the void follows my will.